It all starts with a smell. A smell so vile that it turns your stomach. You've smelled bad things before, but this was different. Rotten meat mixed with something metallic, something unnatural. It wasn't constant at first. Just enough to make you notice, make you wrinkle your nose as you passed apartment 2B. Now, let me set the scene. This is an old building. I'd been there for years, 5 years to be exact. It's one of those places where people keep to themselves. Old couples, retirees, the kind of people who nod at you but don't care for chit-chat. It was quiet, peaceful even, until Mr. Lewis moved in. Mr. Lewis, mid-40s, nothing too strange at first glance. He had that vibe though, you know the type, polite enough but something about him didn't sit right. We crossed paths in the hallway once. He smiled at me, but his smile? It never reached his eyes. He even invited me over for a drink sometime. I told him I was busy. Something in my gut told me to stay away. I should have listened to that instinct harder. Not long after, things started to change. It wasn't just the smell. There were noises. At first, just thuds late at night. I assumed he was moving furniture or whatever. But soon, the noises got weirder. Like something heavy being dragged across the floor, slow, deliberate. And then, one night, I swear I heard crying. Not loud, faint, muffled, like someone desperately trying not to be heard. I asked my neighbors if they heard it too. I mean, you expect someone to back you up, right? But nope, they brushed it off. Old building, they said. Just creaky pipes. I didn't buy it. There's no way pipes sound like someone sobbing at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night. The smell though, that was getting worse. It started to invade my apartment. I couldn't escape it. Thick, choking, like decay had soaked into the walls. Every time I passed 2B, the smell was worse. I gagged, every time. I told the landlord about it, thinking he'd do something. But no, he shrugged it off with a lame excuse about weird cooking. Who the hell cooks with a smell like that? It got to the point where I started avoiding the hallway altogether. Until one night, it was so bad I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't breathe. It was like the smell was strangling me inside my own apartment. So, I snapped. I marched down to his door, furious, and pounded on it. Hard. Nothing happened at first. No sounds inside, just silence. I almost walked away, but then the door creaked open. There was Mr. Lewis, standing there with that same eerie smile, like nothing was wrong. But behind him, the smell hit me like a wall. It was overwhelming. I couldn't even form words. He stepped aside, gesturing for me to come in. I hesitated, but something drove me forward. The air inside was heavy, like it was pressing down on me. But it wasn't just that. It was too quiet. I mean, dead quiet. Everything in his apartment was spotless. Like, freakishly clean. But there was dust, thick layers of it, on every single thing. It was like nobody had touched anything in months. And yet, there he was, standing like he lived there normally. I was about to leave. I should have, but then, I saw them. Bones. Small, scattered behind his couch, broken like something had been gnawing on them. I could barely breathe. My stomach churned, and I felt like I was going to be sick. I wanted to run, to get the hell out of there, but then, he grabbed my arm. His grip was cold, ice cold, like touching death, and then, he leaned in close, whispered in my ear, "I'm not the only one living here." I don't know how I did it, but I yanked my arm free and bolted out of that apartment. I slammed my own door shut behind me, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. What the hell had just happened? Bones? Who was he talking about? I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't safe in my own home anymore. That night was the worst. The noises, they got louder. Scratching at my walls, as if something was clawing its way through. And then, breathing, right outside my door. I pressed my ear against it, and my heart nearly stopped. It was right there. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Morning finally came, and I was exhausted. I opened my door, bracing myself for the stench, but it was gone. Completely. And when I glanced down the hall, Mr. Lewis' door was wide open. Empty. I didn't waste time. I called the cops. They came. Searched his place, but what they found? Piles of dust and those bones, but the bones were too old to identify. Mr. Lewis? Vanished. Like he never existed, no records, no trace, just dust. I packed up and left that same day. There was no way I was sticking around for whatever came next. But the weirdest part? As I left, I glanced one last time at 2B. The door was still open. The apartment was dark, but I swear, in the shadows, there was something. A shape, watching. The police never figured out what happened. They questioned me, but I didn't have answers. It was like a nightmare that wouldn't end. I moved far away, trying to forget. But no matter how far I went, the noises followed me. Scratching at my new walls. Breathing outside my new door. Sometimes, I still catch that smell. The rot, the decay. I know he's not gone. And I know, I'm not alone. Now, the question is, what would you do if you were me? Because every night, the scratching gets louder, and I don't know how much longer I can take it. Let's go for story number 2. Imagine this. You move into a new apartment. Everything seems fine at first, maybe even a bit too quiet. And then, on your first night, you notice something strange. Across the street, in the building opposite mine, there's a girl. She's standing there, right by the window. At first, I thought she was just people watching, you know? But something about her gave me chills. She didn't move, not even a blink. It's like she was frozen. Still, I brushed it off, told myself it was nothing. I mean, maybe she's bored, right? But here's the thing. She was there the next night too. Same spot, same position, and I'm thinking, okay, this is getting weird now. Long black hair, skin so pale it almost glowed under the streetlights. She looked unreal, and she still didn't move. I even joked with myself, what if she's a mannequin? But even saying it didn't shake off that eerie feeling crawling up my spine. By the third night, I couldn't get her out of my head. Every time I looked out my window, there she was, watching me. It was starting to mess with me. Why was she always there? Why didn't she move, ever? Something was seriously wrong, but I couldn't stop staring back at her. It felt like her eyes were drilling into me, even when I wasn't looking. You know when you just feel someone's gaze? It was like that. I woke up sweating in the middle of the night, completely convinced she was watching me from her window, or maybe even closer. I hit my breaking point after a week of this. I needed answers. I couldn't just sit there being creeped out anymore. So, I threw on my jacket, crossed the street, and went to her building. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt, like something was pressing down on me. I reached the third floor, and her door was slightly ajar. I hesitated. You don't just walk into someone's apartment, right? But I was desperate. I pushed the door open. And that's when it got real. The apartment smelled wrong. You know that stale, old smell? The kind that makes you feel like you're walking into something dead. The place was dark, but I could see her in the corner by the window. Only, she wasn't a girl. She was a mannequin. I felt my heart stop. This whole time, I'd been losing sleep over a piece of plastic. But the worst part? It didn't explain everything. Why did I feel like something was in that room with me? My skin prickled, and I swear I could hear breathing. But there was no one there. My chest tightened. I had to get out. I bolted, sprinted down the stairs, and didn't stop until I was back in my own apartment, door locked behind me. But that didn't help. I couldn't shake the feeling, couldn't stop thinking about that mannequin. It was like whatever was in that apartment had followed me. And I was stupid enough to look out the window again the next night. This time, the mannequin's head was tilted, facing me. And behind her, a shadow. Tall, dark, glowing eyes staring right at me. I slammed the curtains shut and sat there, trying to catch my breath. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. That night was a nightmare. Every creak, every little noise made me jump. I kept hearing scratching. Like something was outside my door, waiting to come in. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I made up my mind to leave. Packed my bags, ready to get out of that place. But something stopped me. Maybe curiosity, maybe sheer stupidity. I needed to know what was really happening. So, I went back. This time, I brought a crowbar. The door to the mannequin's apartment was shut, but as soon as I got close, I heard it. This faint giggle, like a little girl laughing. My stomach flipped. I kicked the door open. The apartment was empty. The mannequin was gone. But the air, it felt thick, like something was breathing right down my neck. I searched the room, and that's when I saw it. A mirror on the wall, old and cracked. In the reflection, the mannequin was there, staring right at me, but she wasn't anywhere in the room. And behind her? The shadow, closer now. I didn't think. I ran back to my apartment, locked the door, but it didn't help. As I sat there, gasping for air, I heard it again, that giggle, but this time, it was coming from the dark corner of my room. That's when everything spiraled. I couldn't focus, couldn't think straight. The feeling of being watched never left. I started noticing small things, furniture moved, books on the floor. My reflection in the mirror started looking off, like something was lurking behind me, but when I turned, nothing was there. I stopped looking out the window. I was terrified I'd see her again. Or worse, the shadow. One night, I heard scratching outside my door again. And I finally broke, called my friend John to come over. He laughed at first, but I could see it in his face. He was spooked. We tried to distract ourselves, but then we heard it. A knock. Slow, deliberate, neither of us moved. And then, the giggle. John's face went pale. He wanted to leave immediately. We bolted out of my apartment. But as we reached the bottom floor, we both heard it, footsteps, heavy breathing, right behind us. We didn't turn around. We just ran. I spent the night at John's place, but I couldn't escape it. The giggle followed me, haunted me, even in my head. I didn't sleep at all. The next day, John dropped me off, but I knew something was different. My apartment felt wrong, like the walls were closing in. It all came to a head that night. I woke up, and there she was, the mannequin, standing at the foot of my bed. Her head tilted, staring right at me. And behind her, the shadow, larger than ever. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was real. And now, as I sit here writing this, I can feel it. Breathing over my shoulder, waiting for me to stop. I was never alone.